U.S.-China tensions intensifying. China's foreign ministry imposing sanctions on 11 Americans, including Senators Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz for, quote, behaving badly on Hong Kong-related issues. The U.S. putting sanctions on 11 Chinese and Hong Kong officials due to the controversial national security law passed earlier this year. Joining me now, Fox News strategic analyst, retired four-star General Jack Keane. General Keane, great to see you as always. Where do we go from here?
Well, there's a strategic shift that's taken place, and it's largely due to China's malign behavior here. Certainly, the accelerant has been an epidemic that became a world pandemic, and they contributed to the spread of it, and clearly they're being held accountable. And what countries are doing is they're reassessing their relationship with the Chinese Communist Party. I mean, some countries clearly are very dependent on China economically. But even others who have huge interests are looking at China and going forward in a relationship and starting to adjust that relationship. The United States, I think, has stepped up as a global leader here and trying to build a broad coalition to actually redesign the strategy dealing with the Chinese Communist Party. Clearly, their behavior is abhorrent to many countries in the world today. And we've never had a leader, Dagan, like President Xi, going all the way back to Mao Zedong, who is so ambitious, so aggressive, and his behavior is incredibly malign. And he's literally stepping over the countries in the region, but also the world at large. And that is the strategic shift that's taken place.
What are other countries doing, and what can they do to essentially protect themselves from China and the kind of growing threat?
Well, the most important thing is to work together. And the United States government recognizes this. I mean, when they came in this administration, they certainly saw China as a long-term strategic threat to the American people and America's security. And they defined it as such in their national security strategy. That was the first time that framework had ever been established. But our focus was largely economic, it was largely tariffs, it was largely trade and balance. And now this government has taken a whole-of-government approach in dealing with it and shoring up the relationship with our partners and allies, starting with the region itself, where the Chinese Communist Party has trampled over our partners and allies in the region's interest, and in doing so on a regular basis. The answer is to align together. And there's certainly strength in these numbers, and the administration recognizes that. And I do think this strategic shift it is going to continue. It reminds me of post-World War II and how countries aligned themselves against the threat of Russia, obviously then the Soviet Union. And we developed a strategy to deal with that transcended administrations, whether they were Republican or Democratic. And this is going to be the major challenge of the 21st century for America, is dealing with the Chinese Communist Party.
Right or wrong, the American people and people around the world see this virus killing hundreds of thousands of people globally. And it originated in China. And they see the danger. Whether it was right or wrong, they see the danger. Moving on to Lebanon's Prime Minister, General, stepping down in the wake of the deadly explosion in Beirut last week. Protests across the country raging since that blast. Your take on this, General?
Well, Lebanon is in serious trouble. This is the second government since December. Then Saad Hariri resigned and took his entire government with him on the protests. What's going on in Lebanon? Their economy is in the tank. They got serious food shortages. They have continuous power outages. Their banking system is broke. Poverty is very much on the rise. And it's largely due to a political system that has failed the country. And the reality is it is full of corruption. Most of the people in the political system are former warlords that go all the way back to the 1980s civil war that took place in Lebanon. And this latest crisis brought on by this catastrophic explosion that destroyed a portion of the entire port and downtown area hundreds killed, likely there's still thousands missing, so that will be where the numbers will go, I'm assuming into the thousands. But what at the heart of this is really a fundamentally broke political system that has tremendous economic impact on the people. They are being crushed by it.
I want to ask you about National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien saying that Chinese hackers are targeting the U.S. election infrastructure. What are your concerns this November with, again, potential interference from foreign bad actors?
Well, first of all, 2016 was certainly a major wake-up call in the United States as Russia definitely was attempting to interfere with our election, something they've done all throughout Eastern Europe. They did it with the UK Brexit election. And China and Iran are also involved in this kind of activity. So the good news is, Dagan, our government has got their antenna up on this. The second good news is that the president revealed in an interview a few weeks ago that in 2018 at the midterm elections, Russia was trying to penetrate and meddle in our election. And Cyber Command, under the authorities that the president granted them, conducted an offensive cyber attack against them and shut it down. That being the case, the United States is poised not to accept this. There will be consequences. So the leaders are Russia, China, and Iran who are trying to do it. They do it by trying to penalize one of the candidates through a disinformation campaign, and they do it, as you suggested in the introduction, hacking into the actual election infrastructure itself, which was not successful in 2016 nor in 2018. Not that they won't continue to try, they will. And what they're really after is they want to undermine the people's confidence in the democratic process. After all, these are authoritarian regimes, and the greatest threat to these regimes are democratic countries out there that have independence and freedom. That's what they're really undermining.
General, I'm going to put you on the spot, because I know you can. I know you can at least speak to this. So, Vladimir Putin has come out and said that Russia has registered the world's first COVID-19 vaccine, but and he actually even compared it to the global space race, I believe. Russian officials have compared it to the Cold War era space race. Remember that with Sputnik. But the West is very concerned, people in the West, that Russia has accelerated the clinical evaluations to the point that there are real safety concerns about this. Just speak to propaganda out of Russia.
Well, it's full-time work for them. They constantly do it. And Putin, since he took over in 2000, now a 20-year experience with him, what he's always wanted is Russia to return to the world stage as a dominant power and all the prestige that's associated with them. Every single day he's trying to enhance that, usually at the expense of the United States. It doesn't surprise me that he's trying to announce to the world that they're the first country that has a vaccine. Yes. And our scientists here in this country will openly question the efficacy and the safety of that vaccine for sure. That's where we stand. I don't think it's something that we could trust.
General Keane, great to see you. See, I knew you could. You can always talk about, well, pretty much everything. General Jack Keane, always a pleasure.
Good talking to you, Dagan.
Great to see you.